Mrs. Carter, the funds cannot be released without your husband's signature. The sentence settled over the glass conference table with more weight than $3,800,000 should have been able to carry. Madison gave a small laugh, the polished kind she used when someone had made an obvious mistake. She sat beneath the soft amber lights of Whitmore Private Bank in a cream designer suit, one hand resting beside a leather portfolio, the other wrapped around a cup of coffee she had not touched. Across from her, Olivia Bennett, the bank's senior relationship director, did not laugh. Neither did Grant Whitmore, Madison's financial advisor, though 30 seconds earlier he had been smiling like the deal already belonged to him. I sat at the far end of the table in a navy jacket Madison had told me was too plain for a meeting like this. My name is Daniel Carter. I was 44 years old, and until that morning, my wife believed I was the least important person in the room. I think there's some confusion, Madison said. Her voice stayed pleasant, but I knew the slight tightening around her mouth. It was the look she wore when a waiter brought the wrong bottle of wine, or a hotel clerk failed to recognize her name. Daniel is here as my spouse. He isn't involved in Aurelia Prive. Olivia folded her hands over the loan documents. Mr. Carter is more involved than you appear to realize. Grant shifted in his chair. It was barely noticeable, just the quiet drag of Italian leather against carpet, but I heard it. When a man has spent years studying numbers, contracts, and people, he learns that the smallest movements often tell the largest truths. Madison turned toward me. Her expression was not curious. It was irritated, as though my silence had somehow become another social inconvenience she would have to explain. Daniel, did you sign something without telling me? I looked at the black fountain pen resting between us. It was a small object, polished and expensive, the kind of pen a bank places on the table when it expects everyone to agree. No, I said. Not yet. Grant cleared his throat. Olivia, perhaps we should focus on the approved terms. Madison has already provided the projections, the collateral schedule, and the expansion plan. The terms are not approved, Olivia replied. They are conditional. She opened the portfolio and turned one page toward Madison. Northstar Capital appeared at the top in clean silver lettering. Madison glanced at it and waved one manicured hand. Northstar is a passive investor. They've never interfered with my decisions. That sentence almost made me smile. Almost. 6 years earlier, Northstar had kept her company from missing payroll. It had covered the lease on her first flagship location, renegotiated 2 vendor contracts, and guaranteed the credit line that allowed Aurelia Prive to grow from a local concierge service into a luxury brand with clients in 5 states. Madison knew all of that. What she did not know was who sat behind the name. Olivia looked at me, not her. Mr. Carter, are you prepared to authorize Northstar's ownership interest as security for this facility? The air conditioning hummed above us. Somewhere beyond the frosted glass, a phone rang twice and stopped. Madison stared at Olivia, then at me, waiting for the room to return to the version she understood. Why are you asking him? She said. Olivia's answer came calmly. Because Daniel Carter is the managing member of Northstar Capital, and Northstar holds the controlling voting interest in Aurelia Prive. Madison's smile did not vanish all at once. It weakened at the edges, then slipped away as though it had finally grown tired of holding itself in place. Grant lowered his eyes to the table. He understood before she did. The loan she had celebrated, the Los Angeles expansion she had announced to friends, the new office she had already begun decorating, all of it depended on the signature of the man she had described 3 nights earlier as someone who could not afford her lifestyle. That's impossible, she said. Not loudly. Madison never raised her voice in rooms where powerful people might be listening. Daniel works from home. Olivia remained professional. Mr. Carter manages his investments from a private office. Northstar's records are clear. Madison looked at my watch, an old stainless steel piece my father had given me when I graduated college. She had mocked it that week, saying it looked out of place beside her jewelry. Now she studied it, as though it might reveal who I had been while she was busy deciding what I was worth. You own Northstar? She asked. I held her gaze. I control it. The distinction mattered, though not for the reason she thought. Control was never about having the most money in the room. It was about knowing which decision everyone else needed you to make. Olivia slid the pen toward me. Madison's eyes followed it across the table. Then sign, she said, the words arriving too quickly. We can discuss this at home. I placed 2 fingers on the pen, but did not lift it. Grant finally looked up, and for the first time since I had met him, his confidence seemed borrowed. I had spent years allowing Madison to believe my quiet life meant a small life. I had told myself I was protecting her pride, giving her space to build something that felt entirely her own. But sitting there, with $3,800,000 waiting beneath my hand, I realized silence could preserve a marriage only until it began protecting the lie that was destroying it. Before I sign anything, I said, I want to know why 3 vendors on this expansion proposal share the same mailing address. Grant stopped breathing for half a second. Madison turned toward him, and in that moment, the bank meeting stopped being about my secret. 3 nights earlier, the rooftop restaurant had been warm with candlelight and expensive confidence. Downtown Dallas stretched below us in a grid of gold, traffic sliding along the streets like glowing threads. Madison had chosen the table closest to the glass railing, where the skyline made every photograph look more important. She wore a dark green dress and the diamond earrings she had bought after Aurelia Prive opened its 4th location. Grant sat to her right, surrounded by 2 investors, a hotel developer, and a married couple Madison had recently added to her social circle. I sat beside her with a glass of sparkling water, listening as they discussed private clubs, vacation homes, and the kind of renovations that cost more than my first house. No one asked what I did. They already believed they knew. To them, I was the quiet husband who worked from a home office, drove the same sport utility vehicle for 8 years, and never seemed interested in proving anything. Madison had once admired that about me. Lately, she treated it like a defect. The conversation turned to California when Grant opened a glossy folder and placed an architectural rendering in front of her. It showed a white stone building near West Hollywood, all tall windows, soft lighting, and carefully arranged luxury. Aurelia Prive Los Angeles was printed across the bottom in gold lettering. Madison touched the page as if the building already belonged to her. This is the next level, Grant said. New York will follow within 18 months. One of the investors raised his glass. To going national. Everyone joined him. I did not. I had seen the projected lease numbers 2 weeks earlier, though Madison did not know that. They were aggressive. The marketing budget was worse. I had also noticed the same vendor appearing under different corporate names, but I had not yet found the connection. That night, I was still deciding whether I was looking at careless planning or something more deliberate. Madison glanced at me. You could at least pretend to be excited. I am interested, I said. I just think the expansion deserves a closer look. Grant smiled without warmth. Daniel worries whenever numbers get large. A few people laughed politely. Madison did not defend me. She leaned back in her chair and gave me the patient expression someone might use with a child who had interrupted an adult conversation. The bank has reviewed everything, she said. Professionals have reviewed everything. A bank reviews whether it can be repaid, I told her. That is not the same as deciding whether something is wise. Grant set down his wine glass. With respect, this is Madison's field. Hospitality and luxury service are her field, I said. Debt is everyone's field once it becomes large enough. The hotel developer looked away. He had the instincts of a man who knew when a private argument was about to become public. Madison gave a quiet laugh. Daniel, you still compare every purchase to what things cost 20 years ago. Because some things are priced to impress people, not to create value. Her eyes cooled. That is easy to say when you are not the one expected to maintain a certain standard. The words changed the temperature at the table. Grant looked down, but the corner of his mouth lifted. Madison noticed. Instead of stopping, she continued. My clients expect a level of presentation. My partners expect me to live in the same world I sell to them. I kept my voice even. A business should pay for its image from its earnings. You would say that, she replied. You have never understood what this lifestyle requires. One of the investors shifted in his seat. His wife studied the skyline with sudden concentration. I could have ended the conversation. I could have told Madison exactly how much of her company Northstar controlled, how many losses I had covered, and how many times my personal guarantees had kept her polished world standing. Instead, I asked one question. What exactly do you think I do not understand? Madison smiled, but there was no kindness in it. You cannot afford the life I live, Daniel. You never could. The sentence landed cleanly. No shouting. No dramatic pause. Just a verdict delivered over white linen while the city glittered behind her. Grant gave a low chuckle. Someone else reached for a glass. I felt the old instinct to protect her, even from her own words. It was a habit built over years, and habits do not disappear simply because they become painful. I placed my napkin beside my plate. Then I suppose the numbers should speak for themselves. Madison rolled her eyes. Please do not turn this into another lecture about budgets. I was not planning to. The waiter arrived with dessert menus, unaware that something important had just ended. Madison turned back to Grant, and within seconds the conversation resumed. Los Angeles. Launch parties. Membership tiers. I sat quietly and looked at the folder beside her handbag. A sheet near the top carried the logo of Whitmore Private Bank and the amount of the proposed facility. $3,800,000. Beneath it was the name Northstar Capital. Madison had not noticed. Grant had. When he saw me reading, he closed the folder and placed his hand on top of it. That small movement told me more than anything he had said all evening. I finished my water, stood, and told Madison I was leaving. She barely looked up. Do not wait for me, she said. Grant will make sure I get home. I nodded once and walked toward the elevator. The doors closed on their laughter. In the mirrored wall, I saw a man who looked calm, ordinary, and almost invisible. 3 days later, the same people who believed I had no place in Madison's financial world would discover that one signature stood between them and everything they wanted. The elevator carried me down 40 floors in silence, and by the time the doors opened into the hotel lobby, Madison's words had already begun changing shape inside my head. At first, they sounded like anger, then embarrassment, then something worse. Familiarity. She had not invented that version of me at the dinner table. She had been building it for years, one introduction at a time. At charity events, I was no longer Daniel Carter, the man who had spent 2 decades building companies and studying risk. I was the one who keeps everything running at home. At client dinners, she called me her steady one, usually with a smile that made the phrase sound affectionate. People heard dependable. I heard harmless. When someone asked what I did, Madison often answered before I could. Daniel consults a little, she would say, as though my work fit between grocery shopping and repairing loose cabinet hinges. I had allowed it because correcting her would have required explanations I was not ready to give. Secrecy had once felt like privacy. Over time, it became permission. I stepped outside into the warm Dallas night and handed the valet my ticket. Couples drifted past beneath the hotel lights, dressed for rooms where everyone wanted to be noticed. 10 minutes later, my sport utility vehicle rolled around the corner. It was dark blue, 8 years old, and paid for. The young valet looked almost apologetic, parking it between a new Bentley and a silver Range Rover. I thanked him, tipped him $20, and drove home alone. Our house sat 12 miles north of downtown in a quiet neighborhood lined with live oaks and limestone walls. Madison had chosen it because the address carried the right reputation. I had agreed because the backyard faced a narrow greenbelt and the upstairs room had enough space for my office. That office became another part of the story she told about me. From the outside, it looked modest. 1 desk, 2 monitors, a bookshelf, no framed awards, no photographs beside famous investors, no newspaper articles about the sale that had made Northstar possible. I kept those things in storage. I told myself I did not need reminders. The truth was that I did not want Madison asking questions until I was ready to answer them. When I arrived home, the kitchen lights came on automatically. White marble counters reflected the empty room. A bottle of champagne sat in an ice bucket beside 2 glasses, prepared for a celebration that had apparently not required me. Next to it was a sample book of imported fabrics for the Los Angeles office. Madison had marked 3 choices with gold tabs. I ran my fingers over the pages and wondered when our home had become a waiting room for her next achievement. There had been a time when she asked my opinion about everything. The first Aurelia Prive logo. The price of her earliest service package. Whether she should hire a second employee. She used to sit cross-legged on the floor of my office with takeout containers between us, reading client emails aloud and laughing whenever someone described her company as elegant. Back then, success felt like something we were building together. Somewhere along the way, her questions became announcements. Then announcements became instructions. We are hosting 12 people Saturday. I need the car moved before the photographer arrives. Do not mention investments around Grant. He handles the serious side. Every sentence moved me a little farther from the center of my own marriage. I opened the refrigerator, found a container of leftover soup, and heated it on the stove. The microwave would have been faster, but I needed the sound of something ordinary. The burner clicked. The pot warmed. The house remained still. At 11:40, Madison sent a message saying she would be late. No apology. No question about whether I had made it home. I placed the phone face down and carried the soup upstairs. My office smelled faintly of cedar and printer paper. I turned on the desk lamp, opened a secure portal, and entered a password Madison had never seen. Northstar Capital appeared on the screen. Beneath the company name were holdings, guarantees, board resolutions, and the latest financing request from Aurelia Prive. $3,800,000. I opened the supporting documents and began reading every line. Madison believed I had become an accessory to her life because I had stopped demanding to be seen. She did not know that while she built a public image, I had been maintaining the structure beneath it. Payroll reserves, lease guarantees, voting rights, debt protections, quiet decisions made from the room she dismissed as a hobby office. Just after midnight, I reached the vendor section and noticed the first inconsistency. 3 separate companies had submitted proposals for different parts of the Los Angeles project. Different names, different logos, nearly identical formatting. I searched the registration records. All 3 listed the same commercial mailbox in Nevada. I sat back and listened to the soft hum of the computer. The insult at dinner no longer mattered as much as the folder Grant had covered with his hand. Madison had made me invisible. Grant had counted on it. And for the first time, I began to wonder whether he had encouraged her to see me that way for a reason. By 1:30 in the morning, I had enough questions to know I was not dealing with coincidence, but not enough answers to accuse anyone. That mattered. Suspicion can make a man careless if he lets emotion do the accounting. I closed the vendor records, saved copies to an encrypted drive, and leaned back in my chair while the house settled around me. Somewhere downstairs, the refrigerator motor started and stopped. Outside, a sprinkler clicked across the lawn in slow mechanical beats. Ordinary sounds. They made the truth feel even stranger. Grant had not simply helped Madison prepare an expansion. He had placed himself between her and every number she did not want to examine. To understand why that worked, you had to understand Madison before the restaurants, the charity boards, and the photographs beneath crystal chandeliers. She grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment outside Tulsa with a mother who worked the front desk at a dental office and a father who changed jobs whenever bills caught up with him. Madison never described her childhood as poor. She called it unstable. There is a difference. Poverty can become a condition. Instability becomes a fear. She remembered eviction notices folded beneath the sugar bowl, school shoes worn one semester too long, and the humiliation of pretending she did not want to attend events her family could not afford. When she was 12, a classmate asked why she wore the same winter coat every day. Madison laughed as though the question did not matter, then went home and cut the label from the collar because it showed the name of a discount store. She told me that story during our first year of marriage. We were sitting on the floor of a rented apartment, eating Chinese food from paper cartons because our dining table had not arrived. She said, "I never want anyone deciding my value by what I cannot buy." I took her hand and told her no one worthy of her attention ever would. Back then, I admired the hunger in her. She could walk into a plain room and see what it might become. She noticed details other people ignored. The warmth of a lamp, the weight of a menu, the way a host could make a guest feel important before a single word was spoken. Aurelia Prive grew from that instinct. Madison did not sell transportation, reservations, or access. She sold the feeling of never having to ask twice. Clients paid for certainty, and she delivered it with discipline. In the beginning, every dollar mattered. She negotiated flower contracts herself, compared software fees, and reused display boxes until the corners softened. Success did not corrupt her overnight. It arrived politely. First came better hotels because clients expected meetings there. Then designer clothes because image influenced trust. Then memberships, private dinners, and friends whose conversations revolved around who had been invited where. Each expense had a reason. Every reason sounded professional. Over time, the line between what the business required and what Madison desired disappeared beneath careful language. A handbag became brand positioning. A leased car became client confidence. A weekend in Napa became relationship development. I never objected to comfort. We could afford more than she knew. What concerned me was how quickly comfort turned into evidence. Madison needed each new thing to prove the last achievement had been real. If someone bought a larger house, ours suddenly felt temporary. If a client flew private, first class became embarrassing. She was no longer trying to escape the apartment in Tulsa. She was running from the girl who had stood in a school hallway wearing the wrong coat. Grant understood that fear almost immediately. He never told her to spend less. He told her that caution could damage momentum. He called every luxury an investment and every doubt a sign that someone did not understand her level. When I questioned an expense, he translated concern into jealousy. When I suggested slower growth, he called it small thinking. Madison began repeating his phrases as though they were principles she had discovered herself. Visibility creates credibility. Luxury clients recognize hesitation. You cannot build a premium brand with a middle-class mindset. The last one was his favorite. I heard it at dinners, in the kitchen, and once in our bedroom while Madison studied a proposal on her tablet, and I folded laundry beside her. She did not look up when she said it. That was how far we had drifted. I had become the symbol of everything she feared returning to: restraint, simplicity, and an old car that still worked. Grant became the voice promising she would never have to look backward. Near 2 a.m, headlights swept across the ceiling. Madison was home. I heard the front door open, her heels cross the hardwood, and the muted sound of her placing keys on the marble counter. A minute later, she appeared in my office doorway. Her makeup was still perfect, but the energy from dinner had faded. She looked at the screen, then at me. "You are still awake." I had work. Her eyes moved to the printed financing summary beside my hand. "That is confidential. So is a marriage." The words came out quieter than I intended. She folded her arms. "I am not doing this tonight." "Then answer one question." She sighed. "What?" I turned the page toward her. "Who introduced Grant to these vendors?" For the first time that evening, Madison did not have an immediate response. She looked at the names, and something uncertain passed across her face. Then she covered it with irritation. "Grant handles procurement." That was not my question. She picked up the document, scanned the figures, and placed it back down. "You are searching for problems because you do not understand the opportunity." "Maybe." I closed the folder. "But someone understands your fear of being seen as small, and he is using it to make sure you never look too closely." Her expression hardened. "You are talking about yourself now." She turned and walked away before I could answer. I listened to her footsteps fade down the hall. Madison believed I resented the world she had built. The truth was worse. I was beginning to see how carefully Grant had built himself into the center of it. The next morning, Madison left before 7 without saying goodbye. I heard the garage door rise while I stood in the kitchen pouring coffee, then watched her black sedan disappear beyond the stone entrance of our neighborhood. On the counter, she had left the financing summary exactly where I had placed it, as though refusing to touch the paper could make its questions disappear. I carried it upstairs and opened the locked drawer beneath my desk. Inside was a thin blue folder marked Northstar Capital. The folder held 6 years of decisions Madison had never known were mine. 6 years earlier, Aurelia Prive had not been a national luxury brand. It had been 3 exhausted employees, a rented office above a furniture store, and a checking account with enough money to survive 23 more days. Madison had hidden the truth well. She still dressed carefully, still answered clients with confidence, still spoke about expansion as though failure belonged to other people. But numbers do not care about confidence. 2 major clients had delayed payment. A hotel partnership had collapsed. Payroll was due on Friday, and the landlord had already sent a notice about the overdue lease. I discovered the problem by accident when a collection letter arrived at our house. Madison had used our address when she first registered the business and had forgotten to update one account. I remember holding the envelope in the hallway while she stood 10 feet away, telling someone on the phone that Aurelia was entering its strongest quarter. When the call ended, I asked how much she needed. She said nothing. I asked again. Her face changed, not because she was afraid of losing the company, but because she was afraid I had seen her failing. "I will handle it," she said. "I did not ask whether you could handle it." I placed the letter on the table. I asked how much you need. She finally told me. The amount was larger than our visible savings and smaller than the truth of what I had. By then, I had already sold my financial technology company. The sale had been structured quietly through attorneys, trusts, and a holding company I created before Madison and I married. I never hid that I had done well. I hid the scale. At first, the decision came from caution. My father had watched money change friendships and destroy partnerships, and he taught me that wealth attracted people who could imitate loyalty with remarkable skill. Later, the secrecy became harder to explain. Madison loved ambition, but she also loved proving she could stand on her own. I convinced myself that revealing everything would place a shadow over every success she earned. So I gave her a smaller truth. I told her I knew an investment group that might help. That group was Northstar Capital. My attorneys handled the meetings. An independent board reviewed the company. No favors were written into the terms. Aurelia received enough capital to clear its debt, protect payroll, and rebuild its vendor network. In return, Northstar received 62% of the voting interest, along with approval rights over major loans, asset sales, and changes in ownership. Madison read every page. She negotiated fiercely. She simply never asked who controlled the company on the other side of the table. Perhaps she assumed no one close to her could command that kind of money. Perhaps I allowed that assumption because it protected me from a conversation I should have had years ago. The investment worked. Madison used the funds well. She hired stronger managers, improved client retention, and turned one struggling office into a respected brand across 5 states. Her talent was real. Northstar did not create her instincts or her discipline. It gave those qualities enough time to survive. Whenever the company needed support, I provided it through proper channels. A lease guarantee in Houston. A short-term credit facility during the pandemic. Additional reserves when a major client entered bankruptcy. Madison believed Northstar was unusually patient. She called the firm her silent partner. I almost told her the truth each time. Then another crisis passed, another location opened, and the right moment moved farther away. Sitting in my office that morning, I opened the original investment agreement and found my signature on the final page. The ink had faded slightly, but the decision behind it had not. I had wanted to protect Madison from humiliation. Instead, I had built a structure that allowed her to mistake my silence for dependence. That was my part in what had happened between us. I could blame Grant for feeding her pride, and I could blame Madison for choosing contempt, but I could not pretend I had been completely honest. My phone rang at 8:15. It was Olivia Bennett from Whitmore Private Bank. Her voice was measured and formal. She confirmed that the loan committee would meet in 2 days and that my authorization was required before the funds could be released. Then she paused. "Mr. Carter, there is something else you should review before that meeting." A secure message appeared on my screen while she spoke. It contained revised vendor disclosures submitted less than 12 hours earlier. Grant had changed the ownership information after I questioned Madison. One of the Nevada companies now listed a new managing director. The name belonged to Grant's younger brother. Grant's brother was named Evan Whitmore, a 41-year-old commercial consultant whose public record showed more confidence than experience. His Nevada company had been formed 9 months earlier with no employees, no completed projects, and a mailing address shared by 2 other vendors on the Los Angeles proposal. Together, those companies were scheduled to receive more than $900,000 from the loan. The numbers were not proof of fraud by themselves, but they were no longer innocent. I called Rebecca Sloan, Northstar's outside counsel, and asked her to begin a confidential review. Rebecca had worked with me since the sale of my technology company. She did not waste words. "Does Madison know?" she asked. "Not yet. Does Grant know you control Northstar?" "I do not think so." There was a brief silence on the line. "Then keep it that way until we understand the structure." I authorized a forensic accountant to examine the vendor relationships, payment schedules, and ownership disclosures. No dramatic confrontation. No angry messages. Just records. People can argue with accusations. They struggle to argue with their own signatures. By 10 that morning, Madison's assistant sent me an invitation to lunch at Aurelia's Dallas office. The message said Madison wanted to clear the air before the bank meeting. I almost declined, but something about the timing felt arranged. Aurelia occupied the top 2 floors of a renovated building near the design district. The lobby smelled of white tea and cedar, a scent Madison had selected after testing 32 samples. Her name appeared on a brass wall behind the reception desk. Mine appeared nowhere, which was exactly how I had designed the investment. The receptionist greeted me politely, then asked whom I was there to see. 6 years of supporting the company, and I was still processed like a delivery. Madison's assistant led me into a conference room where lunch had been placed on a polished walnut table. Madison was already there. So was Grant. He stood when I entered, wearing a charcoal suit and the calm expression of a man who believed the room belonged to him. "Daniel," he said, extending his hand. "I am glad we can talk like adults." I shook it once and sat across from him. Madison remained near the window, looking down at the city. "Grant explained the vendor issue," she said. "His brother's company is providing local coordination. The relationship was disclosed." "It was disclosed last night," I replied. Grant folded his hands. "An administrative oversight. 3 companies sharing one mailbox is also an oversight." His smile held. "That address belongs to a registered agent. It is common in Nevada. And the matching proposal formats?" "Same consultant." "Your brother?" Madison turned from the window. "This is exactly what I meant. You find one detail, then build a conspiracy around it." I asked questions. "You questioned Grant in front of me as though he were dishonest." I looked at him. Honest people usually survive questions. For the first time, the smile in his eyes disappeared. Only for a second. Then he leaned back and softened his voice. "Madison, perhaps Daniel is reacting to how quickly the company is changing. Growth can be uncomfortable for people who value predictability." There it was. Not an answer. A translation. Every concern became fear. Every disagreement became evidence that I could not keep up. Madison sat beside him, not beside me. The distance was only 4 feet, but it felt like the final measurement of our marriage. Grant had spent 3 years making himself indispensable. He attended strategy meetings, private dinners, vendor presentations, and client events. When Madison doubted herself, he told her she was visionary. When she doubted me, he told her I was threatened. He did not need a romantic relationship with her to become more intimate than a husband. He only needed access to the version of herself she most wanted to believe. "The bank meeting is Thursday at 10, Grant said. "Your presence is required because the company was founded during the marriage. It is standard procedure." He said it smoothly, without looking away. He either believed I was only there as a spouse, or he was testing how much I knew. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. Madison relaxed slightly. "Attend. Be pleasant. Sign what they put in front of you." "That's simple." "That's simple," Grant answered. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make him notice it. Then I nodded. "I will be there." Madison's shoulders lowered, as though a difficult employee had finally agreed to cooperate. She pushed a plate toward me, but I had lost my appetite. While Grant described launch dates and construction schedules, my phone vibrated once beneath the table. A message from Rebecca appeared on the screen. The preliminary review had found consulting fees routed through a Wyoming holding company connected to Grant. The amount was $275,000, payable the moment the loan closed. I locked the screen and looked across the table at him. He was explaining how the Los Angeles opening would establish Madison as a national figure. She listened with the same focused admiration she once gave me when we planned her first office over takeout food. Grant believed Thursday's meeting would release the money. Madison believed it would confirm her future. Neither of them understood that I was not going to the bank as her husband. I was going as the man who could stop the entire transaction with one word. Thursday morning arrived under a low gray sky, the kind that made downtown Dallas look flatter and colder than usual. Madison was already dressed when I came downstairs, standing at the kitchen island with a tablet in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other. Her cream suit was pressed perfectly. Her hair was pinned back. Every detail said control. Only the untouched coffee suggested otherwise. She looked at my navy jacket and frowned. "You are wearing that. It still fits." "That is not what I meant." She set the tablet down and studied me as though presentation might determine whether the loan was approved. "This bank deals with serious people, Daniel. Please do not make jokes about budgets or start questioning Grant in the meeting." I poured coffee into a plain ceramic mug. "What would you prefer I say?" "Nothing, unless someone speaks directly to you." Her answer came too quickly. She softened it a moment later. "I'm not trying to insult you. This is simply complicated. And you think I will embarrass you." Madison looked toward the window. Rain dotted the glass above the sink. "I think you do not understand how much depends on today." She was right about that, though not in the way she believed. Northstar's legal team had worked through the night. Rebecca sent me the preliminary findings at 5:42 that morning. Grant's consulting company was set to receive $275,000 when the loan closed. His brother's firm would receive another $410,000 for project coordination. 2 additional vendors were controlled through the same Wyoming holding company. The combined payments exceeded $1 million. Some services might have been legitimate. The structure was not. The documents had been revised repeatedly, each version making the relationships harder to see. I had forwarded the report to Olivia with instructions not to discuss it before I arrived. How much depends on today? I asked. Madison picked up her tablet. The Los Angeles lease. The design contracts. 2 senior hires. The launch schedule. Everything. And if the loan does not close? It will. That was not my question. Her jaw tightened. We would lose the location, damage our reputation, and possibly owe termination fees. How much? Grant is handling it. There it was again. The answer beneath every unanswered question. Grant was handling it. I placed my mug in the sink. Madison, did you personally review the cancellation terms? I reviewed the summary. Prepared by Grant. Prepared by the person I hired to manage finance. You signed commitments before the financing was final. She looked at me with open frustration. That is how growth works. You move before the opportunity disappears. Sometimes the opportunity is designed to make you move before you think. Her expression hardened. I will not begin this day with another lecture. She walked toward the garage, then stopped with her hand on the door. We should arrive separately. Why? I am meeting Grant in the lobby, and I cannot be late. The reason sounded practical. The message did not. She did not want to enter the bank beside the husband she had trained everyone to underestimate. I understand, I said. Madison hesitated, perhaps expecting resistance. When none came, she opened the door. 10 o'clock. Please be there by 9:50. I will. She left without saying goodbye. I waited until the garage door closed, then returned upstairs. On my desk sat my father's old stainless steel watch. He gave it to me when I finished college, years before wealth complicated every room I entered. The face was scratched near the number 4, and the band had been repaired twice. Madison once said it made me look like a man who had stopped moving forward. I wore it because it reminded me that value and appearance were rarely the same thing. I fastened it around my wrist, collected the North Star folder, and drove downtown through steady rain. Whitmore Private Bank occupied 6 floors of a limestone tower near Clyde Warren Park. Valets moved beneath a wide canopy while black sedans lined the curb. I parked in the underground garage instead. At 9:48, I stepped into the private banking lobby and saw Madison near the elevators with Grant. He leaned close, speaking quietly while she nodded. When they noticed me, Grant smiled. Right on time. Madison's eyes moved to the blue folder beneath my arm. What is that? Something I may need. Daniel, this is not the place for another personal investigation. Grant gave a patient sigh. The bank already completed due diligence. Let the professionals handle the paperwork. I looked at him. I planned to. The elevator doors opened. Olivia Bennett was waiting inside. Her expression remained neutral, but she gave me a small, deliberate nod. Grant did not notice. Madison did. The 4 of us rode to the 6th floor without speaking. Soft instrumental music played above us. Floor numbers glowed one by one. Grant checked his cufflinks. Madison reviewed a message on her phone. I watched our reflections in the polished metal doors. 3 people believed they were walking into a routine closing. One knew the money would not move until the truth did. The doors opened onto a quiet hallway lined with frosted glass. Olivia led us into the conference room and placed a black fountain pen beside the loan documents. Madison took the chair at the center of the table. Grant sat at her right. I chose the far end. Before Olivia could begin, Madison leaned toward me and spoke in a low voice. Remember, you are only here to sign what they need. I looked at the pen between us. That is exactly why I came. Olivia opened the meeting by reviewing the loan amount, the repayment schedule, and the assets Aurelia Prive intended to use as collateral. Her voice was calm and precise, but I noticed she skipped the usual congratulations that come before a major closing. Madison did not notice. She sat upright with one hand beside the fountain pen, already carrying herself like the Los Angeles office had opened. Grant answered most of the questions for her. Projected revenue, construction timeline, vendor readiness. Each response came polished and immediate, as though he had rehearsed the meeting in advance. When Olivia asked whether all related party relationships had been fully disclosed, Grant did not hesitate. Yes, he said. The revised statements are complete. I watched his hands. They rested flat on the table, but his right thumb moved slowly against the edge of his wedding band. A small motion. A nervous one. Olivia glanced at me before returning to the documents. Northstar Capital has not yet approved the pledge of its ownership interest, she said. Madison gave an impatient smile. That is why Daniel is here. We can complete the marital consent and move forward. Olivia closed the folder in front of her. This is not marital consent. The smile remained on Madison's face for another second, waiting for the correction she expected. None came. Grant leaned forward. Perhaps we should clarify the structure without creating unnecessary confusion. There is no confusion in the structure, Olivia replied. Aurelia Prive cannot secure this facility without authorization from its controlling voting member. Madison looked toward me, then back to Olivia. Northstar is the controlling member. Correct. Then why are we discussing Daniel? Olivia turned a page and placed it in front of her. Because Daniel Carter is the managing member of Northstar Capital. Silence filled the room so completely that I could hear rain tapping against the windows. Madison stared at the document. Her eyes moved across my name once, then again, as if repetition might change the letters. Grant stopped rubbing his ring. That cannot be accurate, he said. Olivia looked directly at him. The bank verified beneficial ownership before scheduling this closing. Madison finally turned toward me. You own Northstar? I control it, I said. There are other investors, but the final authority is mine. Her face changed in layers. Confusion came first, then disbelief, then the sharp realization that every assumption she had repeated about me had been built on missing information. For how long? She asked. Since before Northstar invested in Aurelia. You were behind the original investment? Yes. Her gaze dropped to the table. 6 years of decisions rearranged themselves in her mind. The emergency funding, the lease guarantees, the patient extensions, the investor who never demanded public credit. She looked up again, and this time anger had replaced shock. You let me believe you were barely consulting. I told you I managed private investments. You let me believe Northstar was someone else. You never asked who controlled it. The answer was true, but it was not kind, and I knew that as soon as I said it. Madison leaned back as though the chair had moved beneath her. So this was a test? No. You watched me build a company while secretly owning the ground under it. Northstar invested when the company had 23 days of cash left. The agreement protected both sides. You negotiated every term. Without knowing I was negotiating with my husband. That part was wrong. My admission stopped her for a moment. Grant used to pause. This is obviously a personal matter, he said. The business should not suffer because Daniel withheld information from his wife. He reached for the pen and slid it toward me. Sign the authorization, and everyone can address the marriage afterward. I looked at the pen, then at him. You seem unusually eager for this loan to close. I am responsible for the expansion. You are also scheduled to receive $275,000 through Whitmore Strategic Advisory the moment it does. Madison turned to him. What is he talking about? Grant's expression remained controlled, but the color had left his face. That is a standard consulting fee. I opened the blue folder and placed Rebecca's preliminary report on the table. Your brother's company receives $410,000. 2 more vendors connected to the same Wyoming holding company receive additional payments. Altogether, more than $1 million leaves the loan before construction reaches its first milestone. Madison looked from the report to Grant. You told me those companies were independent. They are independently managed. By your family? Evan is qualified. That is not what I asked. The words sounded familiar. I had used them with her 2 nights earlier. Now she understood why. Grant straightened his jacket and addressed Olivia instead. These relationships were disclosed. The bank has no basis to delay. Olivia folded her hands. The relationships were disclosed after Mr. Carter raised questions, and the disclosures changed twice in less than 24 hours. The bank has substantial basis to delay. Madison's confidence slipped. How long? Until the ownership, pricing, and fee arrangements are independently reviewed. Grant turned toward me. You planned this. I planned to read what you expected me to sign. I picked up the fountain pen. For one brief second, Madison looked relieved. Then I placed it back on the table without touching the documents. North Star does not authorize the loan. Olivia nodded once. Grant's chair moved softly against the carpet as he stood. You are destroying her expansion over a private grudge. No, I said. I am stopping a transaction you designed to profit from her fear of slowing down. Madison did not defend him. She sat motionless, staring at the pages between us. The future she had entered the room expecting had vanished in less than 10 minutes. But as Olivia collected the unsigned documents, I saw something in Grant's expression that told me the loan was only one part of his plan. He was not disappointed like a consultant who had lost a fee. He was frightened like a man who knew the wrong records were about to be opened. Grant remained standing for several seconds, one hand resting on the back of his chair as if he needed something solid beneath it. Olivia gathered the unsigned documents into a neat stack and informed him that the bank would preserve all submitted versions for review. That sentence changed him. Until then, he had been frustrated. Now he looked cornered by paperwork. There is no reason to treat ordinary revisions like misconduct, he said. Olivia did not react. The bank will determine that after examining the complete record. Grant turned to Madison. We should leave. Your legal team can resolve this without Daniel turning it into a personal spectacle. Madison looked at him, but the trust that had filled her face at lunch was gone. Did you know he controlled North Star? She asked. Of course not. Did you know your brother was receiving $410,000? His company was providing a legitimate service. That was not my question. Grant pressed his lips together. For years, he had taught Madison to interpret hesitation as weakness. Now his own hesitation answered for him. He collected his phone and leather portfolio, then looked at me. You may have authority on paper, but you have no idea what it takes to run her company. That may be true, I said. But I know what it takes to read a contract before signing it. He left without another word. The conference room door closed softly behind him. Madison watched it for a long moment, as if she expected him to return with an explanation large enough to restore everything. He did not. Olivia offered us privacy and stepped into the hallway. For the first time that morning, Madison and I were alone. Rain moved down the windows in thin silver lines. The city below looked distant and unfinished. She stared at the North Star report, then at the fountain pen. How much of my company do you own? She asked. North Star holds 62% of the voting interest. Her breathing slowed. So I never truly owned it. You own your shares, your brand, and the value you created. Control is different. Do not explain control to me as if I am a child. I am not. You let me stand in rooms and call myself the founder while you could overrule me at any time. You are the founder, but not the person with the final decision. I did not answer because the documents already had. Madison rose and walked toward the windows. The reflection in the glass made her look divided, one version facing the city and another facing me. Every time North Star extended a deadline, that was you. Yes. The Houston lease guarantee. Yes. The emergency credit line. Yes. She closed her eyes briefly. You watched me thank strangers for saving my company. I did not want your success to feel borrowed. She turned around. So you made my life borrowed instead. The words landed harder than the insult at dinner because there was truth inside them. I had hidden behind noble explanations for too long. Privacy, protection, independence. Each reason had once been valid. Together, they had become a wall. I should have told you, I said. Madison seemed surprised by the admission. When? Before the original investment. At the latest, when the company became stable. Why did you not? I looked at the old watch on my wrist. Because I was afraid the money would change how you saw me. A tired laugh escaped her. You decided I would fail a test you never told me I was taking. Yes. The word felt small, but it was honest. She looked away again. And I suppose you think what I said at dinner proves you were right. What you said proves our marriage has been damaged for a long time. It does not make my secrecy right. The anger in her expression weakened, leaving something more painful behind. Was any of it real? She asked. The company? Us. I thought of takeout cartons on the apartment floor, her feet tucked beneath her while she designed the first Aurelia logo. I thought of the nights we celebrated a new client with grocery store. Champagne, and the mornings she read emails aloud from the end of our bed. It was real, I said. Then we both started protecting the wrong things. Madison lowered herself into the chair Grant had left empty. She touched the edge of the report without opening it. He told me you wanted me to stay small. I wanted you to grow without risking everything you had already built. He said caution was how insecure men kept ambitious women dependent. And you believed him. She met my eyes. I wanted to. That answer explained more than an apology could have. Grant had not created the distance between us. He had simply found it, measured it, and placed himself inside. Olivia returned with Rebecca on a secure video call. The forensic review had uncovered another document, a draft agreement prepared by Grant 2 months earlier. If Aurelia missed certain loan payments, a private investment group would receive the right to purchase Madison's remaining shares at a heavily reduced price. The group was controlled through the same Wyoming company connected to his fees. Madison read the summary twice. Her face went still. The expansion had never been designed merely to make Grant rich. It had been designed to make her company weak enough for him to take it.